feel like I've been coming home to Durham my entire life, really. I've lived in lots of different places. And it's somewhere I've always escaped to, so whenever life was getting chaotic or exhausting or too much, I could jump on a train and come back here, more specifically to Belmont, which is where I grew up. It's a kind of sanctuary in a way. We're entering the maze of Belmont, where I think if I could bring a stranger here and drop them off in the middle of the estate and dump them, and it'd be like a Hampton Court of suburbia. Growing up here, I've always been aware of the kind of push and pull between sort of suburbia, which is kind of slowly spreading, and the countryside and the rural, which are things I write about a lot, about the sort of progress and expansion, but sometimes it's at the expense of green spaces. You're in suburbia, you're in a place where it's functional. People live here and they commute to Durham or Newcastle or Sunderland. We've got motorways really close by. But then you can suddenly cut across a street like this, and there's all these portals. I always saw them as portals into other worlds. In this case, there's a portal into the Durham countryside. My new novel, The Offing, kind of explores the sort of chasm between village life of the pit villages and city life of academia and Durham, and that's all seen through the eyes of Robert, the narrator. So if we come from the housing estate, Belmont, within 30 seconds or a minute later, we can be here in what is old agricultural land. We're in a cornfield which leads to Leeds, London and Saint-Tropez. And I was aware that those villages were even more self-contained than an estate like this is today, because now we have transport and cars, motorways, bus routes, whereas some of the further flung villages of East Durham were cut off. Durham City is just over that way, so the cathedral is just out of shot. But then if you pan round, you can see the start of the East Durham villages. That's Sherburn Village, it's Sherburn Hill. And all the way from here out to the sea towards Seaham is beautiful green countryside, but it's punctuated by these villages, which were the mining villages of East Durham. So Robert's character, in a similar way to me growing up, sort of began to wonder what lay beyond. So his story is him leaving the village age 16 after doing his exams for what is probably going to be one final summer of freedom before he has to go down the pit and follow his family heritage that his father's done and his grandfather's done. And I've always been interested in these two worlds, the idea of the suburbs encroaching upon the rural and the rural fighting back, really. And there's a lot of themes in my fiction are about this push and pull between old worlds and new worlds. So I've kind of written that into The Offing in the sense that Robert, who is from County Durham, ends up being educated about Durham Cathedral and some of the historic aspects of the city by a woman who is worldly and travel. So she ends up explaining to Robert some of the history of his own home turf. And I think it was important to do that because it's really to emphasise that gap between city and county. So this lane is Rennie's Lane, and really it's a kind of perimeter to the estate. You know, when you want to be a writer, places like this are the introduction to a kind of wild England that exists just beyond where you live. You can maybe just have a little look down here. This is the Scrambles. It was a place I came to wander around, and I could come for hours, and you know, my parents were very open with letting me just go off and play all day. And you could build dens here and climb trees, and these are the things which make you want to return as an adult and write about these things. And what I do in my writing really is that I've been doing doing the same thing now really, which is just making up stories, exploring wild places, climbing trees, writing about nature and animals, and it kind of all started here really. When I got into writing and literature, I became aware that there's not many novels set around Durham or the Northeast at all, not in contemporary literary fiction. The only writer I was aware of was Pat Barker, who was writing great novels. Gordon Byrne was another writer from Newcastle. So you need these figureheads, you need someone who will inspire you to just go, well, they've done it. They've seen that Durham or Newcastle is worth putting on a map. These are recurring themes in my novels. The idea of sort of the countryside being a place of escape and a place where you can kind of hide from yourself and your life, or you can exit life. A lot of my characters retreat into places like woodlands or fields or moorlands, and it probably comes from this idea of passing through or under or over landscape, and I think it's represented by little tunnels like this. Durham's important to my writing in that it's where I'm from and it shaped me. But I'm also aware that I would hate to be seen as a parochial regional writer who is stuck writing about the same place and the same themes. You have to come to it voluntarily and have to want to write about a place. We're going back into the maze. We're back into the Hampton Court of Belmont Estate. My greatest fear has been considered pretentious, and I'm aware that I'm saying this while walking around talking to a camera, but I'd hate for people to think I'd somehow was up myself or was looking down upon the place that I'm from, because I love it really and it's home.